Welcome back, and we are on to our fifth pattern, so let's get started. Okay, so in terms of this pattern, I want you to notice for the first row, and again, rows run horizontally, columns run vertically. For our first row, the first thing that's printed is 7. On our final row, it goes from 7 to 1. That is the pattern we're trying to create. As usual, let's initialize our int variable called num, and we're going to assign a value of 7 to it. Now let's print our two loops. Our first loop, which is an I loop for our rows, and then we're going to print our second loop, which is the J loop, and that is going to be for our columns. And ensure you're selecting for I loop. Now that we have both loops printed and taken care of, now let's proceed. We have both loops taken care of. What is changing? From our last video, we learned that in order to know what to go into the first print statement, we need to determine what's changing. As we see here, we have the row 7. On our second row, we have 7 and 6. Our third row, we have 7, 6, and 5, which concludes that it is the column that's changing. If it's the row that was changing, line 22 would have been 7, line 23 would have been 6 and 6, line 24 would have been 5, 5, 5. Does that make sense? So it is the column number that changes and not the row. So what do we print? We're going to print the columns. And as usual, we're going to add a space in between. Now it is a print statement and not a println. And the final print statement prints the lines. All right. It looks good already, but we're not done. So this is our basic template for printing this loop. Now let's look at line 23. Where does our loop start? It starts from 7. Therefore, our initialization will be from 7. Where does it end? Does it increase or does it decrease? Look at line 29. Where does it end? It ends at 1. So that's a decrement, which means that because it's a decrement, we're going to have to decrease. So it's going to be greater than and equal to 1, okay, because that's the end point. It ends at 1, starts at 7. And again, because it's a decrement, we're going to do minus, minus. Let's start with our columns. Our column starts at 7, okay, look vertically. And where does our column end? Our column also ends at 1. Now that's very simple. So let's start at 7, and our column is greater than and equal to whatever the value I is. And to ensure we do not have an infinite loop, we're going to do j minus minus. Now, as you see, I put 7 here. However, we do want to make this dynamic, so let's change that to num. And let's change that to num. Okay, that is our loop. Let's print it and see what happens. There we go. That is it. That is the loop that we wanted to print. So in our next task, number 6, we would be printing the inverse of this loop. So stay tuned, and I'll see you for task number 6.